Maryland just became the first state in the country to ban surveillance pricing in food retail.
Wow.
Welcome to the 10th. This is your nonpartisan Sunday morning briefing on the week that was and the week that's coming in state legislatures and Congress.
Yeah, if you're tuning in to get prepped for the week ahead, you are in exactly the right place.
Absolutely. And today's briefing is powered by data from amendment.app, which, really helps us cut through the partisan noise so we can look at the actual bills moving across the country.
Right, and when you look at the sheer volume of legislative activity this week, a really distinct unifying theme emerges. We are calling it the boundary line around the South.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, state legislatures spent the week drawing a line around the human body, your face, your fingerprints, your brain signals.
Wow.
They drew it around home addresses, the grocery prices you're offered, and even AI-generated images. And the mission of this briefing is to look at how those lines are actually being drawn. We've got 5 different bills in 5 different states sharing one really powerful structural feature.
Which is?
The right to enforce that boundary line sits with you, the individual, directly in a courthouse.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that cold open, because surveillance pricing is a concept that directly impacts how you interact with the world every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
So Governor Wes Moore signed Maryland House Bill 895 on Monday. This prohibits grocery stores and delivery apps from using your personal data, things like your purchase history, your location, behavioral signals, to charge you a different price for the exact same gallon of milk as the person standing next to you.
Right. It prevents an algorithm from deciding that, well, because you live in a specific zip code and historically buy premium brands, your digital price tag should be 20% higher.
Exactly. And the mechanism enforcing that boundary is the most fascinating part, right?
It really is. The shared feature across all these bills is a legal concept called the private right of action.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So in a traditional regulatory framework, if a massive tech company violates your privacy, you essentially have to, fill out a complaint form and wait for a state agency or an attorney general to launch an investigation.
Right, which relies entirely on bureaucratic machinery.
Exactly, and that can be slow. But a private right of action bypasses that bottleneck completely. It dictates that the person whose data was taken can secure a lawyer and sue the company directly.
Wow. So the enforcement mechanism is the courthouse, and the enforcer is literally you.
Exactly.
So we are effectively taking what used to be a regulatory monopoly, held by the state, and distributing it down to the individual.
Right.
And this strategy of bypassing the state bureaucracy isn't just about grocery prices. I mean, we're seeing this exact same blueprint applied to our physical bodies.
Yeah, we really are. On Tuesday, the New York Senate Investigations Committee takes up New York Senate Bill 1422.
And what does that do?
It allows New Yorkers to sue companies that scan their faces or fingerprints without explicit written consent. And the stakes here are massive when you look at the precedent.
Right, because Illinois has had a version of this law on the books.
Exactly. And under their statute, Facebook had to pay out $650 million, Google paid $100 million, and TikTok paid $92 million.
That is wild.
Yeah, so if New York Senate Bill 1422 clears, it becomes the second state where your face is legally yours to defend in court.
Because it completely flips the risk calculus for corporate compliance.
Oh, totally. When the threat of financial penalty is decentralized to millions of residents, companies basically have to re-engineer their entire data collection framework.
And Vermont is applying this decentralized pressure to the data broker industry, right? Vermont House Bill 211 moves on Friday.
Yes. Vermont was actually the first state to require data brokers to register back in 2018, but that older law had this gaping structural hole.
It gave residents no right to actually delete the data those brokers had already swept up.
Right. If you wanted to clear your profile, you would theoretically have to track down and contact all 283 registered brokers individually.
Which is literally a full-time job.
Oh, absolutely. So House Bill 211 creates a single state portal. One request wipes your data from all 283 brokers simultaneously.
That is so smart. One form to clear them all. That dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for the average consumer to, reclaim their digital footprint.
Yeah, but Vermont is also drawing a boundary around something much more futuristic.
Oh, right. The Vermont legislature just passed Vermont House Bill 814, and it sits on Governor Phil Scott's desk. This bill codifies neurological rights.
Which sounds like sci-fi, but the necessity of this bill comes down to how consumer devices are actually evolving right now.
Right.
We're seeing smart headbands, advanced earbuds, and virtual reality rigs that actively measure the actual electrical signals your brain generates.
So they're reading your focus states or your emotional reactions.
Yes, exactly. House Bill 814 creates privacy standards specifically for that neural data. It anticipates a world where insurers or employers might want to buy access to your cognitive patterns.
That's terrifying.
It is. And furthermore, the bill regulates mental health chatbots and mandates that patients be notified when AI is handling their clinical communication.
Wow.
It also places strict limits on how health insurers can use AI in utilization review.
And just to clarify for everyone, utilization review is that opaque internal process insurers use to decide if they're going to actually cover your medical treatment.
Right, so it functions as a guardrail against the Wild West of medical AI.
Yeah, and we are seeing states aggressively attempt to rein in algorithms, especially when they cross the line into severe personal violation.
Definitely. Like Governor Tim Walz signed Minnesota House File 1606 last Wednesday.
Making Minnesota the first state to ban nudification apps.
Yeah, and these are the AI tools that fabricate highly realistic, fake, explicit images using a real person's clothed photograph.
And again, the bill gives survivors a private right of action to sue the creators or distributors, right?
Exactly. And it empowers the state attorney general to collect $500,000 per violation.
Wow. Okay, so that same protective instinct for the vulnerable extends to physical locations, too.
Right. The New Jersey Senate Law and Public Safety Committee hears New Jersey Senate Bill 1291 on Monday.
This is the one that extends Daniel's Law.
Yes. Daniel Andrel was the 20-year-old son of a federal judge, tragically killed in 2020 when an anti-feminist lawyer found the family's home address online.
Right, and the original law shields the home addresses of judges, police, and prosecutors from data brokers.
Exactly. So Senate Bill 1291 extends that shield to victim support advocates and forensic nurses.
Because these are the frontline professionals handling high-tension cases for stalking and domestic abuse survivors, they're interacting with dangerous individuals daily.
Right, yet currently, their home addresses are completely legal to buy and sell in the open market.
Okay, I have to ask a foundational question about this entire approach, though. By relying so heavily on a private right of action across these different sectors, from deep fakes to grocery algorithms, are we just crowdsourcing enforcement?
That's a fair question.
I mean, does this shift the immense burden of policing massive billion-dollar tech companies onto everyday people who might not have the resources to hire an attorney?
Well, it does place the financial and emotional burden of initiating a lawsuit squarely on the individual, which is a significant hurdle for sure.
Right.
However, regulatory agencies are chronically underfunded and painfully slow. They cannot possibly investigate every unauthorized facial scam or deepfake.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So by opening the courthouse doors directly to the individual, you unleash thousands of potential enforcers overnight. The immediate threat of mass litigation forces companies to comply preemptively.
Instead of just waiting to see if a state agency decides to audit them 3 years down the line. Okay, so while the coders and committees in those 5 states kept drawing the boundary line around the self, the cartographers in Tennessee and South Carolina kept redrawing the maps.
Yeah, we are seeing a profound shift in the mechanics of our elections.
Tennessee House Bill 7002 just passed in an extraordinary session.
Yeah?
Now, traditionally, congressional districts are drawn once a decade, right after the census.
Right. The entire political ecosystem builds around those lines for 10 years.
Right, and Tennessee law previously required districts to stay locked in place between those redraws, but House Bill 7002 strikes that lock,
Opening the door for what is called mid-decade redistricting.
which removes the stability of that decade-long cycle.
Yes, and Tennessee's bill is now law, and this follows Florida, which just redrew its congressional map mid-decade 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So when you remove that temporal lock, the geographic boundaries of political power become incredibly fluid.
And South Carolina House Bill 5683 opened the week illustrating exactly that fluidity. 25 Republicans filed it to redraw all 7 of the state's congressional districts.
Right, and that includes Representative Jim Clyburn's majority-black 6th district, which is the state's only Democratic seat.
Which is wild because back in January, South Carolina leadership stated they had no appetite for mid-decade redistricting. Now the maps are back in play.
Yeah.
Mechanically, this is like moving the field goal post right in the middle of the third quarter. It creates massive procedural disruption for election administrators and voters who suddenly don't know who their representative is.
Well, to understand the sudden acceleration of mid-decade redistricting, we really have to look at the federal context.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in Louisiana v. Calais. That ruling effectively gutted Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Which is the core provision that has barred maps from diluting minority voting power for nearly 60 years.
Exactly. And the legislative counterweight to that judicial ruling is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would rebuild those federal protections.
But currently, that bill just sits on the Senate's desk in Congress. It has not moved.
Right. And that stalled federal action creates a massive vacuum.
The field goalposts are moving because the federal referees have left the field.
Yeah.
And we see this pattern of states filling the void everywhere, but the mechanics are probably most visible in healthcare. It's like states are acting as the emergency room doctors for policy, fixing the immediate bleed-outs while waiting for a specialist to arrive from Washington.
They are totally triaging what the federal government isn't funding or enforcing.
Right.
And this brings us to a foundational concept in American governance, what Justice Louis Brandeis famously termed the laboratories of democracy.
Yes.
When the federal government is frozen, absent, or clawing back policy, you don't just get silence, you get 50 separate experiments running at once across the states, testing different mechanisms to solve the exact same structural problems.
And, by the way, you can actually track the status of all these laboratories of democracy by searching your own state on amendment.app.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have a perfect case study of this triage in Connecticut House Bill 5003, Governor Ned Lamont signed this omnibus bill on Monday.
Right. And the standout provision there is 100% workplace assault pay.
Which is huge. Usually, if a worker is severely injured, workers' compensation caps their pay at roughly 75%.
Yeah, but under this new law, if a Connecticut teacher, nurse, or healthcare worker is violently assaulted on the job and can't return to work, they collect their full paycheck.
Because the state recognized that punishing an assaulted teacher with a 25% pay cut was a massive failure of the safety net. So they simply bypassed the old cap.
And states are also restructuring how emergency medical care is delivered.
Right.
The Louisiana Senate Finance Committee takes up Louisiana House Bill 909 on Monday. This mandates that insurers cover mobile crisis response teams.
Oh, so when someone is in a psychiatric crisis, instead of the default dispatching armed police and taking them to a chaotic ER, this bill ensures a specialized mental health team can be deployed instead.
Exactly. And crucially, it bars insurers from requiring prior authorization for this care.
Meaning a doctor doesn't have to get corporate permission before delivering treatment.
Right. This bill dictates that an insurer cannot force a family to wait on hold for corporate approval while a psychiatric crisis is actively unfolding in their living room.
That makes total sense. Over in New York, the Senate Insurance Committee is looking at New York Senate Bill 884-26.
Yeah, this one is interesting.
It takes federal mental health parity enforcement rules, the rules saying insurers must cover mental health as comprehensively as they cover a broken leg, and writes them directly into New York state insurance law.
So it functions as an insulation layer. If federal enforcement of those parity rules gets rolled back or stalled, New York insurers still cannot legally start quietly denying mental health coverage.
Right, and we see that same proactive expansion in Georgia. Governor Brian Kemp signed Georgia Senate Bill 220.
The major medical cannabis expansion.
Exactly. It lifts the 5% THC cap on their previously narrow program and adds severe conditions like lupus, autism, stage 3 HIV, and severe Alzheimer's to the qualifying list.
Wow. Meanwhile, the Alaska Senate Labor and Commerce Committee heard Alaska Senate Bill 283. This sets statewide caps on nurse staffing ratios.
Meaning it dictates exactly how many patients a single hospital nurse can be assigned.
Right. Like 1 to 2 in the ICU, 1 to 1 in the operating room, 1 to 4 in the ER.
No.
California has stood alone on comprehensive nurse staffing ratios since 2004.
So if this clears, Alaska becomes the second state to legally mandate these caps, directly addressing the core driver of nurse burnout.
Yes, and states are also surgically closing gaps left by massive federal legislation. Like the Federal Inflation Reduction Act capped insulin prices at $35, but solely for Medicare patients.
Which left a massive gap for anyone with private insurance.
Exactly. So the Ohio Senate Insurance Committee is considering Ohio Senate Bill 227 to cap a 30-day insulin supply at $35 for Ohioans on commercial insurance plans.
Which is an experiment 29 other states have already run, right?
Yeah, exactly. And finally, on the healthcare front, the Alaska House Finance Committee heard Alaska House Bill 193.
This proposes 8 to 26 weeks of paid family leave, which is a huge deal because currently Alaska is one of 37 states with absolutely no paid family leave on the books.
Right. These state legislatures aren't just managing municipal budgets and healthcare codes. They are deeply engaged in defining human dignity and legal identity through statute.
Yeah, the spectrum of what the law touches is incredibly vast. I mean, it stretches from the incredibly intimate details of our morning routines all the way to defining the beginning of life.
Definitely. Just look at Virginia House Bill 122. Governor Abigail Spanberger signed it last Friday.
Right, it outright bans forever chemicals, so PFAS, formaldehyde, mercury from any cosmetic sold in Virginia, and outlaws cosmetic animal testing in the same statute.
Which literally alters the chemical composition of the products millions of people apply to their faces every single day.
Yeah, it's wild. And then on the other side, South Carolina House Bill 3039, known as the Pinckney Hate Crimes Act, was heard in a House subcommittee on Wednesday.
Right. The bill is named for Kalina Pinckney, the pastor and state senator killed in the 2015 Mother Emanuel shooting in Charleston.
And South Carolina is currently one of only 2 states in the entire country without a hate crimes law.
Exactly. So this bill provides the legal mechanism for prosecutors to seek heavier penalties when a crime is motivated by the victim's identity.
But the House has passed it twice before, and it has repeatedly stalled in the Senate.
Yeah.
Looking at a completely different aspect of legal identity, 16 Republicans filed Minnesota House File 5084 on Friday.
Oh, right. The proposed constitutional amendment.
Yes, that would legally define a preborn child as a living human from the moment of fertilization.
And the mechanism here bypasses the governor entirely. If it clears the legislature, Minnesota voters will be the ones directly deciding on fetal personhood at the ballot box in November.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And, while bills dealing with these profound questions of identity, dignity, and redistricting get almost all the heavy media coverage,
right,
there are massive, quiet bills moving right now that fundamentally change the daily economic texture of life for millions of Americans. These are the highly practical, bipartisan affordability bills.
And I have to say, it is so frustrating that these highly practical bills fly completely under the radar of cable news. Is it just because there's no yelling involved?
Honestly, probably yes. They don't generate outrage, so they don't get airtime, but their impact is staggering.
Like Rhode Island House Bill 7797. The House Finance Committee heard it Tuesday. This is a baby bond bill.
Right. It legally requires the state to seat every single baby born to a Medicaid family with a $3,000 trust.
And by the time that child turns 18, compound interest grows it to roughly $12,000, which they can use to buy a home, pay for school, start a business.
And the mechanism funding it is brilliant. It is entirely funded by unclaimed property.
So abandoned bank accounts and uncashed checks the state already collects.
Meaning it requires absolutely no new taxes. It alters the generational wealth trajectory for low-income families through existing state resources.
That's amazing. And Michigan is tackling affordability through urban architecture.
Yeah, the House Government Operations Committee heard Michigan House Bill 5571.
Which allows apartment buildings up to 6 stories to use a single interior exit stairway.
Right. Currently, fire codes require 2 stairways. And requiring 2 stairways forces buildings to be wide and blocky, which requires massive, expensive lots.
Oh, I see. So if you allow a single stair design, which is already standard across Europe and Canada, and carries no higher fire risk according to recent data,
then developers can build slim, mid-rise housing on tiny, cheap urban lots. Builders cite this as one of the most effective ways to aggressively lower the cost of building.
which directly lowers the rent for the tenants.
Exactly. If Michigan passes this, they join states like Colorado, Texas, and Tennessee that have adopted this reform just in the last 18 months.
That is so cool. We're seeing structural cost reductions in childcare as well. Rhode Island House Bill 7462 writes a $0 childcare copay into statute for families earning under 125% of the poverty line.
Which is important because right now those affordability rules just sit in agency regulation, meaning a future governor could wipe them out without a legislative vote.
But this bill locks that $0 copay directly into law.
Yeah.
And looking at physical safety in social spaces, Ohio Senate Bill 348 requires bars and restaurants to stock drink test devices for roofies, GHB, and ketamine.
California mandates this for bars, but Ohio will be the first state to extend the safety rule to restaurants as well.
Wow. Okay, so there is so much moving right now.
There really is. And as we look at this massive volume of state activity, we also monitor the public pressure signal. What are constituents actively demanding from their federal representatives?
Right.
ResistBot tracks these petitions, and the highest engagement campaigns this week map perfectly onto the federal vacuums we just discussed.
Right, like citizens are demanding that Congress restore the office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, which the Department of Homeland Security quietly shut down.
Yeah. They are mobilizing to demand Congress block a proposed $1.7 billion Treasury fund.
And most notably, there is a massive petition demanding the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act in the wake of Justice Samuel Alito's ruling in Louisiana v. Calais.
Absolutely.
Well, three numbers to land with from this week. 96 to 32, that's the Maryland House vote on House Bill 895, making them the first state in the country to ban surveillance pricing in grocery retail.
65 to 0, that's the Minnesota Senate vote on House File 1606, passing the first state law to ban AI-generated nudification apps.
99 to 0, that's the Louisiana House vote on House Bill 909, forcing insurers to cover the specialized teams that respond to a psychiatric crisis.
5 states drew a boundary line this week. The line runs around the face, the fingerprint, the brain signal, the home address, and the price tag, and on the other side of it, the courthouse is open.
For the full text, status, and plain English breakdown of any bill we mentioned today, head to amendment.app. Thanks for listening to The 10th. We'll see you next Sunday.